There we go. All right. Well, thanks for continuing to support our cloud days. For this session, we're going to demonstrate Cisco's Webex Calling, kind of walk through the process of setting up a tenant, and maybe even if everything's successful, make a couple test phone calls. I'm here in our Louisville office in the training room, working remotely and kind of assisting with a lot of the behind the scenes work and making sure things show up correctly is Billy Zoellers. My name is David Rice. I lead our IT infrastructure consulting team, which is your team for phone systems, for switches, routers, servers, basically just about anything that could be delivered in a box, but also cloud technologies too, whether it's migrating your infrastructure to the cloud, using infrastructure as a service, or assisting with various aspects of deploying new stuff into the cloud. So that's what our team does. I've been working with Billy for more than 10 years now, kind of doing the same thing. And Billy will be participating in various pieces of this demo, but while also working behind the scenes to keep some things going. So before we actually get into the demo, we're going to walk through kind of the case for cloud calling. Cloud calling, there's a lot of vendors out there. There's some that have been around forever. I'm sure people have heard of Vonage. They were very consumer, home user type, customer focused for years. They've been around for a while. Microsoft Teams Voice is a cloud calling example. Ring Central 8x8. There's a number of them out there. The one we've centered on is Cisco Webex Calling. And the reason we've centered on this one is just, it's very, very simple, as you'll see in this walkthrough, because we will literally be starting as if you're a brand new customer all the way to making phone calls by the end of this demo. I don't expect our demo to take the entire hour and a half that's booked for this. So I think we'll get you out early for lunch, most likely. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit about why people choose cloud calling. What does cloud calling get you? So there's a couple different things. There's a reduced on-premises hardware footprint. What does that mean? That means you're out of the hardware business, outside of the phones. But even then, you could go with using soft phones on your PCs or using headsets and not even have to fool with physical phones connecting on your network and the little bit of overhead to manage a separate VLAN or separate security procedures for your voice network. And not having to manage hardware on site gives you the advantage of not having to worry about a piece of hardware failing and you having to come to the office at 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning to get the phone system back up for the company. You can focus on more of running your business than keeping your business running. Increased agility. I specifically call it hybrid work because that's obviously a hot topic in today's days, in today's time with COVID and a lot of people working remotely. All the predictors or people trying to talk about where they think the IT industry is going all say that hybrid work is here to stay. People found that for the most part, when they sent their staffs home, when they closed the office due to COVID, that they were able to still function, in some cases function better. And due to that, a lot of businesses are going to keep that model, whether it's a healthcare system that may send their non-clinical staff to work remotely, but then use the space that's a premium at most hospitals and healthcare systems. Use space that were previously occupied by non-medical staff for medical functions. But all over the board, people are working remotely, either part-time, full-time. Here at Dean Dorton, we have, I think it grows every day. We probably have 20, 30, maybe even as many as 50 staff that work primarily from home. And if you would have asked Dean Dorton 10 years ago if they thought they would have that, they probably would have laughed at you because nobody worked from home for the most part there. And we see that across the industry. The other part of agility, though, is you can adapt to your changing environments, whether it's your choice or not. You know, maybe inclement weather came through and your office lost its internet. Well, with cloud calling, you just need an internet connection somewhere. So you could, again, send your staff to work from home and your phones are still working. You're still able to take calls from your customers or call out to your customers. The other piece of agility is you can add and remove to your system on the fly. With big boxes in your office and the old traditional way of doing things, you have to generally buy up front the licenses you thought you need over a certain period of time, and then it was a major process to buy new licenses and get the license file, install the license file in the system, and get everything, that whole process correct for that to function. So cloud calling gives you the ability to buy what you need today, and if you hire one user tomorrow, you go and add the user, and you're good to go. So it gives you a lot of agility in that space. A constant innovation is another piece of not only cloud calling, but a lot of cloud solutions. In that, again, if you buy that piece of software, piece of hardware, you've sunk money into that, and you might be able to do some updates here and there to get new features, but usually when you have time to do it or when you're required to do it for something to keep working, with cloud solutions and particularly cloud calling, and particularly Webex calling, they're adding features almost weekly to the system. It's kind of funny, the lab guide that I'm going by for this demonstration was created last year. And as I was kind of prepping for this demonstration, I was finding that things where it told you to go find something are now in a different spot in the cloud because how they've added new functions and kind of rearranged how to get to them. So I had to do a little bit of interpreting of how to accomplish what the steps were saying to do in the walkthrough. Another piece of constant innovation is kind of the other way around for your business. Let's say today you just have a phone system and it's old, you're ready to move it to the cloud. Well, you can move just the phone system to the cloud. You don't have to take advantage of every single feature on day one. But now you as a business, now that you're in the cloud, you can innovate by adding some of these new features that are available to you over time to increase the productivity of your staff, the connectivity of your staff. If you're in a large hybrid work environment where everybody's physically separated, you can use these features to feel more connected. And then simple configuration, which I won't elaborate much because you will see that through this demonstration. In the old style phone systems, you used to have that phone guy you would call who's been doing phone systems for 20 years. He would come in, mutter a few words that you had no idea what they meant, then he would fix something and then he would leave. With the cloud calling, the configurations are very simple. Basically, you could have a vendor like us come in, do the initial setup and the bulk setup up front, but add, removes, kind of changes past voicemail pin resets. It's very, very easy. And there's not 1,000 different options on every configuration page or cryptic wording of what certain things are on configuration pages. So what's it like to migrate to Webex calling specifically? So most people can't just jump right into it. Maybe they're in a PSTN or telephone services contract with AT&T or Windstream or whoever for their on-premises phone system. So Cisco with Webex calling has made it easy to migrate. Most people start in this phase here, phase 0, where they've got an on-premises phone system. In this case, of course, Cisco's going to say you're a Cisco customer, so you've got their Unified Communications Manager phone system. But you can cross that out and put in ShoreTel, Mitel, Nortel, all these different phone systems that were on premises that have lived forever, and you can start there. And so Cisco provides the ability to slowly transition to the cloud or transition maybe a site at a time. So in this particular piece, you've got your old phone system there. It's talking to the PSTN. And you've got a few phones at site 1 and a few phones at site 2. So then the second step of your migration to the cloud, you're adding in, if you see right there in the middle of the screen, there's a local gateway. You add in a local gateway, and that allows an interaction or interface between the Webex cloud and your existing legacy phone system. And what it allows you to do is a couple different things. It allows Webex Calling to use your existing telephone services through AT&T, Windstream, whoever that you may be still under contract to call out to the world and to receive calls from the world at your existing numbers that you may have published in your marketing materials. But it also allows calls to take place between the systems. People from the Webex Calling world can call the people on your legacy phone system through that local gateway. And then, one site, and you can have multiple sites. So you could have phones at the new Webex Calling phones at the site where your old phone system is, and new Webex Calling phones at any other additional site. So then the next logical process is, so we've kind of got a mixed environment, and now we're set up to add net new sites fully on the cloud. So that'll take us to the next phase where we're removing our on-premises resources, our on-premises PSTN services from AT&T, Windstream, whoever, and we're going to use Webex's PSTN services. So this final step here, we've removed our on-premises phone system. We've subscribed to, if you look in the upper right, it says CCP provider. That's a cloud connected phone provider. And at the time of this diagram, actually, Cisco was using third parties as their cloud connected provider, like IntelliPeer. They still support those, but now Cisco themselves actually is a phone company, and they can provide the same phone numbers, call routing, et cetera, as AT&T or Windstream or your local telephone provider in your area. And so in this final phase, the only thing that's happening is, as far as calls to the world, is your physical phones are talking through the internet to the Webex cloud to register and get their configuration. And then from there, you just dial as if you had an on-premises phone system, and it's seamless. One thing that I think Cisco has an advantage over a lot of their competitors is that when you're in this full cloud setup in phase 2 from this diagram, when two phones, say you see two phones at site 1, when those phones call each other on Webex Calling, the audio actually doesn't go out to the internet and come back because the phones are registered to the internet, to Webex Cloud. The audio actually stays on site, and it knows those two phones are in the same location. So it'll send the audio directly between the phones, which is how it functioned on an on-premises phone system. A lot of Cisco's competitors don't have that feature. And so even though two phones could be literally sitting next to each other on a table, when you called from phone 1 to phone 2, the actual network traffic, all of it would go out to the internet and back, meaning that if there's the least bit of hiccup in your internet traffic, you would get audio artifacts in your phone calls. So the Webex Calling, that doesn't happen. It's smart enough to do that. So now that we've made the case for it, we're going to switch over and just kind of walk through the demo. So let me get set up here. So the demo environment we're using is what Cisco calls their D cloud or demo cloud. And what it's done is we set up a tenant or we reserved a demo environment that came up about 7 a.m. this morning and gives us everything we need to act as if we are a real user and a real company to set up and walk through the process of setting up phones. So you'll see a lot of fictitious names, but we'll go ahead and get started with the walkthrough. So the first thing we're going to do is log into what Cisco calls Webex Control Hub. And the Webex Control Hub, as you can see in the browser address, is at admin.webex.com. This is their centralized management site for anything that's got Webex in the name. So Webex meetings, Webex calling, Webex contact center, if you have call centers that utilize that product. Webex Teams for chat and messaging. And there's probably other applications that I'm not thinking about, but it's also where you manage your conference rooms like this. The video unit we're talking on is actually registered to Webex Control Hub for Dean Dorton, and it receives all its configuration there. It connects to its calendar for scheduling the space. So we'll go ahead and get logged in. And on the landing page, you get a number of just basic pieces of information. You can kind of see the status here of all the Webex services. From is Webex aware of any degradation in their services? Are they having data center problems where their cloud infrastructure is hosted? Luckily in our case, everything's in the green. In the next window down, hybrid services, it shows, currently we don't have any of those enabled because we are on a default landing page. And this is exactly the landing page you would come to once your order is processed to order Webex calling. You would land on this page and start right here. So this would be no different than a new user. Now, I will say that in our situation, I had Billy jump in the background and configure some things just for sake of not sitting on video and doing a number of redundant tasks that may get a little bit boring, so that we can keep things moving. But in general, this is where you land on a new purchase. You see the total number of devices. Billy's got a demo phone already registered in his home office for this. In the upper right, you can see that there's 8 users. If you had users sign up for a free trial under their own name for Webex, under that potential new user section, you can actually import them into your business and consolidate accounts. Let's see what else. Services. There's a couple in the lower right, some good quick links if you're setting this up on your own to take you on how to some specific places and resources. What's new information, just a general overview of what to do there on the control hub. So the next thing we're going to do, and this is kind of the last piece that's automated for you when this decloud, where normally you would have to do it yourself, is we're going to check on the users, make sure the users are there. So this is our list of users. I'm actually logged in as Charles Holland. You can see there that he's an admin of the system, but there's your users and all their email addresses. Showing that they're active is a good thing. It means their account's good and ready to go. They've logged in once and set their passwords, etc. So one thing we're going to do for our demo here is we're going to change the control hub timeout. And the reason we want to do that is so that we don't have to constantly log into Control Hub during this eval. We're going to jump down here under Organization Settings. We're going to change the Control Hub timeout from 20 minutes to 12 hours. That should be good, so we don't have to keep logging in. So the next step we're going to do is we're going to add a fictitious telephone number to the account. And then we're going to assign it to a location. Webex Calling uses locations as logical dividers of your business. You could use it for physical locations. You could use it for different floors in a building if you wanted to, if there was that drastic of a difference in how they were configured. You could use it if you're a business that's maybe a holder of a number of small businesses. You could use a location for every business entity you have. It's just a way of dividing up the system. So we'll go over here on the left side, go to calling. Go to locations. And we're going to look at this predefined dcloud location. You can see that it's set up for premises-based PSTN, meaning that it's actually going to use a local router like you saw in the original diagrams for phase one of the migration to the cloud. So in this case, that's been defined. So we're going to go in and add a phone number to the account. Manage, add. We're going to select the location. This is for the dcloud location. This is based. Next. Toggle on, activate numbers later. And we're going to pick a phone number. In the demo, they want us to use area code 417-555, and then I'm just going to, and they say pick random for the last. And this is just for illustrative purposes. This isn't a real number. Save. Successfully save numbers. All right, there's our new number. Now we're going to go back into locations and make this new number the default number for the dcloud location. And what this does is it makes it so that any call going out that isn't explicitly defining a caller ID number will use this particular number as its caller ID by default. A lot of changes in attempts to stop robocalls, although they haven't been successful attempts to stop robocalls. They've been stricter about making sure caller ID is correct. Let's see. One other thing for that location we're going to do is we're going to set the, under call settings, voice portal. Voice portal is the voicemail system, and we're going to give it an extension so that we can call into it. In our initial setup, it actually won't work. If you don't get, voicemail won't work until you actually give it an extension here. Then we're going to give it a default pin of 13579. 13579. Scroll up to the top and hit save. So now at this point, I'll give it something else. See if it likes that one. We'll move on. I must not be using the right complexity. So now we've got a location with the main number. The next step is to go into each of our users and actually enable them for Webex calling, because as they are configured today over here under users, is they're simply in the system. They don't have a phone number. They haven't been assigned Webex calling licensing. So no, they can't place any calls out to the world. So first what we're going to start with is Rebecca here. So we're going to click into her. Down here under licensing, we're going to hit edit licenses. And then we're going to make sure she's got Webex Calling Professional. Next, this is where we assign her extension. Make sure she's in the dCloud location. Her extension is 6022. All right. So now we're going to also adjust how her account defaults for calling. So let's see here. Calling behavior. Currently, it's using the organizational default setting of calling in Webex. And that means that when she logs into Webex Teams application, it will use that application for phone calls. There are other integrations. There's a separate app for Webex. There's a calling only app. You see it listed there as Webex Calling app. And if you were doing hybrid calling using your on-premises call manager, you could actually use that as your calling method. And there's a couple others. Go ahead and select calling in Webex just to make sure that she's explicitly set to that. We're going to do 2 more users similarly. So there should be a Taylor user, edit licenses. That's calling professional next. Extension for Taylor is 6021. Finish. We're going to do 1 more. Kelly. She is 6023. Finish. So the next thing we're going to do is set the appearance of the phone for when a user registers a physical phone, what will display on the screen. There's some defaults which we'll see, and then we're going to override those defaults, which we'll call device overrides. Do that. Calling, service settings. Configure default device settings. We're going to go to the MPP, which are the physical phones. We're going to change the background image from none, dark blue. We're going to change the display name from phone number, location number to username, first name, last name. Under line key label, we're also going to change that one to username, first name, last name. The line key LED pattern kind of describes what the colors of the LEDs next to the lines will look like. they have different meanings, whether the call's on hold, you're on an active call, the phone's ringing, they have different patterns. We're going to leave it at default. Same for these timers. That just determines when you take it off hook and you start to dial, when does it think you've stopped dialing and try to send the call. So we'll leave those at defaults. Start processing. So now that we've set those defaults, any new phone we add to the system will come up with that configuration. So one of the big things you'll notice on the first phone I configure here in just a second is by default, the background would just be empty. It would be white with just your extension and then your phone number up at the top left. What you'll see because of our changes is that when the phone registers and reboots and comes up, you'll see that the phone has a blue background and then the person's name is at the top of the phone as well as next to the line where their extension would be. All right. So Billy, if you want to end the screen share and then make the Demo DX70 the central video source, we'll go to configure a phone. Actually, re-enable sharing, I forgot one step. I got to actually generate the code. Sorry, so that people know, people can see the process of actually generating code. Sorry about that. Thank you. So we'll generate the code first. So under devices, let that sink in. There's one device already. We're going to add another device. We're going to do it for an existing user from our user list. And the user we're going to add a phone for is Taylor. Going to actually do it for an IP phone. It's the phone we have sitting over there. And then that phone is a, let me confirm, but I believe it's an 8845. Yep. So we're going to do a Cisco 8845. And then how are we going to activate it? We're going to activate it by activation code. And then next. So it's going to show us on this screen what the activation code is. Okay. Now that you've seen me create the activation code, now, Billy, you can unshare. And we'll go enter the activation code and watch the phone register the phone system. Perfect. So the first number is 8970-2123. 0167 and 6466. The demo gods are good to me. It should register. That's check mark is a good sign. So what it's doing now is it's downloading its config. It's going to reboot, and then it's going to boot up into its configuration and register the phone system. Now, I've had this phone online for a day or two, so it should be up to date. But there's always the chance that, with it being a cloud system, and I mentioned the constant innovation earlier, there's always a chance that a new firmware is out there. But nope, looks like it came up. You see the green next to Taylor Bard. And if you look in the upper left by the line key, you see that it's obviously we've got our blue background as we configured. It's got the name, first name, last name next to the line. And then also in the upper left corner, it's got the first name, last name. And those are from where we configured we overrode the device defaults. So Billy, go ahead and share the screen again. We're going to now configure a few of the other pieces of. So Cisco has phones, of course, but they also have video conferencing systems, which we're talking on one of them. And one way to deploy them is the same way. So we could, if we had a workspace, let's say it's a conference room like our training room here, we'll create a workspace for it, and then we'll add a room video conference unit to it. In this case, we're going to go through the process of creating the conference room and what it would be like to add a device, but we're not actually going to add a physical device to it. So step one is add a workspace. Let's just call it training room. Let's say it can hold a meeting room. Let's say its capacity is 50 people in a training room. Pick a location if you want. Next. So in this case, instead of choosing a phone, we're going to choose a room device, which is what Cisco calls their video conference devices. Here, we're actually going to give it a Webex Calling extension. 6025. And what this allows you to do is include other users of your Webex Calling tenant in video calls. And it generates the same activation code very similarly to how we did the phone. One thing you'll notice here is it generated a QR code. There are some devices which, instead of having to go up to the device like I just did and type in the code, where you can literally just show its camera the QR code and it will go do everything else and then be up and ready to use. But what's really a game changer from Cisco's point of view against their competitors in the video conference systems is as quickly as you saw me be able to get a phone out of the box, up and running, ready for the system, a video unit is the same way. Cisco has a Webex board, which we're actually talking about a little bit later this afternoon. We're going to do a demo of that. And when we got our first Webex board, it took Billy and I probably 2 hours to get it mounted on the wall, and then about 15 minutes or less to actually get it, once we had power to it, to get it on the network and making video and joining Webex meetings and having video calls. They're that simple. It actually takes longer to mount the devices than it does to actually get them up and running, which is kind of neat. So the next thing we're going to talk about, we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit from provisioning devices before we go back and do some other configuration changes inside the control hub. But the next thing we're going to talk about is how Cisco makes use of third parties that integrate with Webex Calling. Webex Calling has a very rich API that can do things from control phones, make phone calls happen in the background, to grab information from the system. But also Cisco works with a lot of third parties to enhance the functionality of Webex Calling. And one of those third parties is called Dubber. And Dubber's sole purpose in life is call recording. And so Cisco's used them for call recording. So kind of what it looks like is, back out here, is with Dubber, a little bit. As you can see in this diagram, Um, you've got your phones on the left at your different business locations that are part of your Webex Calling enterprise. You've got people out in the PSTN on the right, which could be any person across the world that you would talk to on the phone. But as a call comes from a phone into the Webex cloud, it forks a copy of that conversation and sends it to Dover for them to do their thing, which is call recording. Dover has other functionality as well, including the ability to transcribe the recording, the ability to, they call them kind of AI features, artificial intelligence features, to kind of figure out the intonation of the callers and then give the call a score. Was the customer or the caller or the people on the call, were they happy? Did it seem like everything went well? So if you're in, say, the retail business, you want to know if you're constantly getting, unhappy customers calling in. And Dover makes that easy by you record all your calls, you run reports. You can even have it generate alerts. Hey, we just received a bad call, and Dover will send you an alert based off that AI information. So we're going to quickly step through setting up a recording, a user's calls to be recorded. Sorry. And there's two parts of that. There's setting up the call recording piece inside of Control Hub, and then there's inside of Dover's control panel and how you connect the two. So we're gonna do that first for the T-bar user. So let's see. Back to Control Hub. Go to Users. And down at the bottom, Taylor Bard. So under calling, you'll see under advanced call settings, all recording is an option here. So under here you have, first, we're going to enable it. And then we have a choice of, do we want to have it so that the caller chooses when the call gets recorded? Do we want it to record everything all the time? Do we want it to always start recording, but then allow the company employee to pause or resume recording? Sometimes people do that. If you're in retail and someone's going to give you their credit card over a call, people will pause recording at that point to not record that person's the audio of that person giving their credit card number and other PI information. And then some states and localities and countries around the world require an announcement when calls are to be recorded, so that both parties on either end of the call know that the call is being recorded. Some states don't. I would check your local regulations, I would say. But in this case, we're going to set it to always. And we are going to have it play a start-stop announcement. And we're going to have it repeat a tone every 20 seconds. Right. And then have it show the call platform information. So these three pieces of information under service provider, external group, and external identifier are how this person's call is identified over on the Dover side of things. So we're going to actually copy these out just to a text file so we don't have to think about it. Service provider. External Group, and I think that the service provider and external group are going to be the same for everybody. I think it's the identifier that changes for every person. So when we get down to it, we'll probably only save out the external identifier. So now that we have this user configured, save. And then we're going to do the same thing for both Rebecca and Kelly real quick. So users, Rebecca, calling, advanced, call recording, enable it, always, speed tone, 20 seconds. Save. All right, one more user to set up. Kelly calling. If you have a large number of these to do, that's where the APIs come in handy, where you could actually script doing this process. And Dubber has APIs as well, which means you could script doing this process on the Webex calling side, and then script adding these users to the Dubber side. One last piece of info copy. Save. Okay, now that we've set everything up on the Webex calling side, now the next step is to go to the Dubber side. So we're going to go to Charles Holland's computer. We're going to set his Dubber password. Oh, we're going to do a forgot password again. Another email. There it is. All right, we're going to go through the steps of activating our Dubber account. No recordings. Okay, so now we need to add our users and connect the Webex calling side to the Dubber side. So we'll go up to the gear, go to account. And then the people section is where you add your users. Standard user. Easier to do it this way. This is the language. Let's try. Okay, so now we have the option to go to the dub points. Dub points is Dubber's location for where you add recording points. That's just their terminology. So this is a section where we connect into, or we connect the Webex calling side to the Dubber side. So we're going to add a dub point. Taylor. Go. Works. Right. Service provider. This. External group. This. The external identifier. Looks like maybe their back-end systems have not cleared out a previous attempt at this lab. So we'll skip past it. We'll try one of the other users and see if they work okay. If this user ends up being taken, we'll skip past the recording. Others demo environments having some issues. Yep. Okay, so we'll skip past recording. So with a lot of cloud calling, Webex calling included, you can use a application to make phone calls. So in this case, I'm actually going to log in to the Webex app. As the Rebecca user. And you see the calling section. So we're just going to place a simple call to this phone over here, which is Taylor. In this case, since they're part of the same company, you can actually should be able to search for the name. Yep. And call. As hopefully you can hear the call or the phone over here ring. So there's some basic usage here of being able to call from a soft phone, being able to call from a desk phone. But now we're going to go in to Webex and the Control Hub again and set up some advanced features that a lot of businesses have, like hunt groups, call queues, auto attendants. And actually, we're going to skip call queues and go directly to hunt groups. So back to Control Hub. Everything from here on out we'll be doing under the calling section. And any kind of added function, hunt group, call queue, etc., are generally under the features sections. We'll go to features. Go to hunt group. And we'll create a hunt group. So for this location, we'll use the dcloud location. This is going to be the sales hunt group. In this example, we're going to use an internal extension, but you could assign a PSTN number to where customers can dial directly into a hunt group and reach a group of users. I'm working under the assumption that most people know what a hunt group is, but if you don't, a hunt group is where you take a group of phones and you assign them to a group, and you assign that group a phone number. And then when that phone number is called, the phones will ring either in a certain order or all at once, so that multiple users can cover calls to a certain number. There's a couple different routing strategies. You can do circular, where it just does the next one in the group. And then when the next call comes in, it tries the next person after the last person who answered. You can do longest idle, meaning who hasn't answered the call the most recently gets the next call. And then you can do it all at once, where all of the phones ring until someone picks up. And you can do things like have it so that it rings a certain number of times, but then if not answered, it goes to a different a voicemail box, or even a different hunt group, or a single user altogether who's covering the flow. So yeah, here's your routing strategies. We're going to do it. Do simultaneous, or actually we're going to do circular next. So advance after a certain number of rings. We're going to set it to 3. if all users are either on the phone or their phones are unplugged or they're not logged into the app, it will consider them busy and we can have it forward on after that. Next. So you can add users or workspaces. We're going to add Taylor and Rebecca to our hub group. Create. And our hot group's there and ready to go. So if somebody were to call that extension 6030, the phones would ring Taylor first, then Rebecca, and just keeping that for 3 rings. The next thing we're going to create is an auto attendant. Go to auto attendant, create auto attendant. Have main at the dcloud location. We're going to call it main attendant. There's extension 6020. Caller ID of main attendant. Next. We're going to give it we're going to create a new schedule. This is how you can do, I want it to behave like this during business hours, and I want it to behave like this outside of business hours. Call this open hour schedule, which is 9 to 5, at the lunch break. Leave that as it is. Next, I'll leave the holiday schedule as none. And then here's where you create your menu. Your menu is where you say press 1 to do this, press 2 to do this. So we're going to create a couple quick options for the menu. Dial by extension, dial by name. Option 3 is going to be transfer without a prompt. So we're going to transfer it to, we're going to transfer it to 6021, which is Taylor. Option 4, we're going to transfer without a prompt as well. But that one's actually going to go to the hunt group, which is at 6030. Sales hunt group. And next, we're going to leave the default greeting, but you can actually upload a WAV file of your own greeting and then give you instructions on kind of how to do that. And create. All right, so now that we have kind of some features set up, now let's make some phone calls. Let's see. So currently, I've got the, we don't have a public number assigned to the auto attendant. So the way you test it is just from any local phone on your Webex Calling tenant, you can just dial the 6020. The other thing is we didn't record a new greeting for it. I'm not going to step through that process. It's a little bit of, takes a few minutes. We're getting low on time. So I'm just going to go to this test phone over here and I'm going to dial 6020 on speakerphone. And we should get it's going to play the default greeting, but we know from our setup that option 1 is dial by extension and option 2 is dial by name. So this is Taylor's phone over here, so obviously can't dial that one. Before I go do this test, let me make sure I have all the numbers in front of me so I know the extensions to dial. So I'm Rebecca here on this soft phone. Her extension is 622. So if I pick up the phone over here and dial, I'm gonna do it on speaker so you can hear it. I'll dial the auto attendant at 6020, and then option 1 is to dial by extension. So I'll choose option 1, and then when I dial by extension, I'll choose Rebecca's extension, which was 6022, and you'll see the soft phone ring on the desktop here.
This call is being answered by an automated attendant. If you know, please dial the extension of the party you are trying to reach. Your call is being transferred. Please hold.
So as you can see on the screen there, the call is ringing in there from Taylor to Rebecca. I'm going to decline it.
Sorry, your call cannot be completed at this time.
And by declining it, sent the call to the voicemail. So if I call that again, just redial. Cancel. 6020.
Well, this call is being answered by an automated attendant. If you know,
Now we're going to dial by
by
name.
using the keys on your touch-tone phone, please enter the first or last name of the party you wish to reach. Press star at any time to return to the main menu.
I'm going to spell out REBE and see if that's good enough. E-B.
Your call is being transferred.
Yep.
Please hold.
So it was enough. And by dialing by name, again, it called her again. Hang that up. Then option 3 would ring the hunt group. I'll go ahead and try that one real quick. But Taylor was part of that hunt group, so you might see, you should still see a phone eventually come to Rebecca. 6020.
Well, this call is being recorded.
Got it busy because I think they're all busy at that time. So we'll get past that. And let's see. Another feature, when you've got multiple locations, you may have situations where you have extensions overlap. And in those scenarios, you can actually add routing prefixes, which allow you to say, to call the London office, which may have extension 6020, you dial 806020, which sends it to the 80 tells it to go to the London office and then route it. And then vice versa, London to call the dCloud location may have a value that it dials to steer the call to the dCloud location and then deliver the call. So one thing that Billy Zoellers did was he went through and created the London location, and so we have the ability to call between the two sites. So I'm going to skip to the point in the demo where we test calls between the two. So in this case, I'm going to call Billy at his demo phone at his site by dialing, the extension of the phone is actually 5001, and the number to send it to the London site is 8044. So I'm going to call 8044 5001, and we should get Billy.
This call is being recorded.
Sounds like somebody picked up.
This is Billy.
Yep. Hey, Billy, thanks for demoing. And so that was me calling him by dialing the 8044 to get to Billy. Billy, now hang up and call from London to the dCloud location. by using the 8001 prefix that sends it to the dcloud location. And then the extension for T-Bard is 6021. So Billy will dial from his test phone to 8001 6021. And an inbound phone call should come in here that I can pick up. Yep. Hello, this is Mr. Bard. Yep, sounds good. Thank you. So that's how you set up site-to-site calling in case of a situation where your numbers overlap. The very last thing we wanted to demo was the ability to call into that local gateway and have the call come into a physical phone. And so that piece takes a little bit of configuration. And so I've had Billy working on that since he was online this morning. Billy, do you think you've got it in a situation where we can test it? Yep, he thinks it should work. So in this case, let's see. Skip to the section where it tells us what to call. Okay. So inside of our dcloud tenant, there's a text file you may have seen that it maps these numbers, these public numbers, to this extension. So theoretically, I should be able to pick up my cell phone and call. If you remember this phone over here, the Taylor Bard phone, that's extension 6021. So let me highlight that one. I theoretically should be able to call that number, and the call should end up on that phone. Let's see. 919. I'm skipping the +1. The +1 just means that it's a U.S. number, and since I'm already in the U.S., I don't need the number. So I'm going to do 919, 991, 2291. 991, 2291. I'm placing call. Oh, got an error. Let me double check the phone number. 991 2291. That should work. That I always knew this part of the demo might be a little iffy because it's we've set it up before for customers, and it's got a lot of places where you could mistype a config, and so you have to go back and verify it. Let me try it just one more time. See if it works. Nope. The other thing I'm going to try is from here, I'm going to try to call my cell phone. See if it'll work the other way. So that is working. So probably can't see my phone, but I've got a call coming in from Cisco Systems in Durham, North Carolina, which is that area code there. Check. So so we're able to get it going one way, but not the other. That's pretty much the end of our demo. As you saw with all the basic functionality, just in an hour and 15 minutes, we're able to go from a default tenant to being able to make phone calls out to the PSTN in a very short amount of time. Probably give it another 15, 30 minutes. we could resolve the inbound calling issue. But that was just a quick run through and configure it as soon as you could type of situation. So last but not least, I just have a couple resources for follow-up. The Webex calling data sheet, I will probably give out these slides. If not, you can just Google it. It'll be one of the first things returned. That'll have all the current information of function and functionality that's available with the Webex calling piece, a Webex calling solution. Another interesting place to read about, how does this function work? How difficult is it to configure it? Help.webex.com is a great resource before and after you've acquired Webex calling. It has how-tos, it walks you through configurations. It has the ability to register for actually live courses within a trainer. And they're bite-sized courses, 15, 30 minutes long about a particular topic like configuring a hunt group or configuring an auto attendant. And then one thing that's very important that everyone should know is SEC has given new guidelines. They're in a lot of states have passed them specific guidelines around them under these names of Kerry's Law and Ray Baum's Act. And those are related to 911 calling. There's some restrictions now, or not restrictions, but requirements now in business phone systems where, for example, you would have to hit 9 to go out. Well, most people, maybe not in your business, who run in and try to call 911 may not know that. And so they don't know they have to dial 9, then 911. Well, one of these changes in regulations is you have to make 911 call 911 on a phone system. There's some other regulations as far as when someone does dial 911, someone in your office needs to be alerted that a 911 call was made. There's one additional piece in that if there's a hang-up call, the 911 center has to be able to call back the phone that dialed 911. So that's a very important piece, and a lot of people don't think about that because they may have one DID or two DIDs for their two numbers for their business, but how are they going to get one of 10 phones, depending on whoever called 911, how are they going to get back to that phone? Well, Webex calling does it using a third party, kind of way that similar way they use Dubber. They use a third party to handle that 911 calling called Red Sky. And basically what happens is when you dial 911, the call inside of Webex calling gets routed to Red Sky, and it takes care of the notification, recording how to call back the phone that called 911, and sends the right information to the phone company with the 911 call to make sure it gets sent to the correct 911 center. If you're a business that has people all over in different locations, you want a 911 call to go to the one showing the right address of where the 911 call made. So the Red Sky solution works for that. But it's something that I just wanted to point out as part of this demo because I think it's something that people need to be aware of. I think it went into effect January of 2021, and then there's some requirements about things needing to be in place in January of 2022. I would encourage people to review that, and if you have questions around it, feel free to reach out. But that's all I've got.